Good afternoon. My name is Sothy, and today I would like to tell you a little bit more about what we've been doing for the last 2 days in Geneva, Switzerland. I am the Khmer's Community Grown Youth Committee President, and I'm very privileged to be here today in France. The last 2 days we've been participating at the 53rd session of the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights on behalf of the Khmer's Community Grown Federation. It's basically what happens is Vietnam signed this treaty on the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights in 1982, and its last review was in 1993. So it's been almost over 11 years now since Vietnam was reviewed by the committee, and this year we have an opportunity to present our alternative report to the committee. So during the first session, civil societies such as the Khmer Community Grown Federation is able to present their alternative report to Vietnam. So I was very honored to be able to give a speech on behalf of our Khmer people who are often the most unrepresented, and they aren't able to speak, so we are able to speak on their behalf. So because of due to the time restraints, we were able to bring 4 main issues. The first issue is the right to self-determination, which is Article 1. We talk about Khmer Kamjir Krom is the Khmer name of the Mekong Delta, and that we are the people of Ngo Phnom. We have lived for centuries in the Mekong Delta. In fact, one of our temples, Sambo Riang Say Temple in Bang province, was actually built in 373 AD. But despite our deep historical ties to the land and our rich culture, Vietnam refuses to recognize us indigenous people. So in Article 1, we refer to the report that Vietnam submitted to the committee, which states that they don't have indigenous people, which means that this statement alone, they do not recognize who we are, our right to self-identify, and does not recognize the true history of our people in Vietnam. So we bring up the issue, this particular issue. We said, Vietnam came to the Mekong Delta. They changed our last name. They changed our rivers, our lakes, the name of our provinces, and they even attempted to confiscate a seal that contains the word Kam Chia Krom in the Khmer script. So this is one of the issues we brought to committee. The next issue that we brought was the issue of the Article 2, which is the right to adequate standard of living. As Vietnam is the biggest exporter of rice in the world, but not many realize that the Khmer Krom people are the ones that make these rice. And despite these strong economic growth in Vietnam in recent years, our people continue to be the poorest people in the region. We are caught in an endless cycle of debt where we are borrowing money to make pesticides so that we can grow better crops. But when we make enough money, the rice, when we don't make enough rice to pay the debts, we are forced to sell our lands. And land is life for us. And if we don't have land, then we are forced to migrate. And many youth in Kam Chia Krom are forced to migrate to already crowded cities that bring gold. And when they go to bring the gold, because they don't have a lot of education or skills, they are forced to work in really low-paying jobs, under really horrible working conditions. So that's one issue we also brought up. The Article 13, the right to education. Vietnam's report, it says that the state shall create conditions for ethnic minority to learn their own language and writing. But in reality our Khmer children is only able to learn 2 to 3 hours per week, which is not sufficient enough for them to be able to learn their native language. And also we brought up the case of Li Jin-da, our monk who was arrested, defrocked, and even forced to confess in public television for the alleged private just really wanting to open their Khmer classes. So the third issue that we brought up was that the right to cultural life. We talked about how we have 2 types of this traditional sports, the dragon boat racing and also the ox racing. We originally organized by the Khmer people. The ox racing in An Giang province is now being exploited by Vietnam for tourism purposes. So, instead of living the culture, we are forced to pay tickets to even see the cultural this sporting event. So we talked about, we mentioned Ms. Fadara Shi, which is a special rapporteur in the field of cultural rights, who also raised this concern. So we spoke about many issues, uh, including the situation of our Buddhist monks and the fact that there is no religious organization in Kampuchea. And we provided some recommendations to Vietnam, including the right of our Khmer Krom to refer as Khmer Krom, which is our right to self-determination. So the first part of the morning, we were able to committee some of the issues, and then Joshua was able to work with the committee members and another organization to host a side event during lunchtime. And this was a little different because this is where we invite the committees to come. We have a little bit of lunch, and we have a panel. And in the panel, we can talk a little more in depth some of the issues, such as women's rights. We talk about Khmer Krom women who do not know that CEDAW exists, and then also that there are some violations of women's rights, where one Khmer Krom woman was trying to fight for her land, but she was prosecuted and thrown in jail for 2 years for trying to resolve that issue. So that just shows to the committee that, you know, the way Vietnam resolves problems with the Khmer Krom is always to put us in prison. They don't really take care of our people as well. And every time that Khmer Krom stands up, it's always you are going against the government, you are creating disturbance in society. But in actual fact, what we're trying to do is to live in peace, live with our culture, have dignity and respect as a people. So it was a very interesting experience to meet the committee and to tell them a little more about, and they were able to ask us questions that was much more in depth. You know, they asked a question about our last names. We even had a question where one expert was asking about the name of our federation. He asked us if the name of the federation, you mean the federation of a state that's trying to separate from Vietnam, or or did you want to create something else? But we reassured him that what we're doing is we want our people to live in peace with their rights, and there is a difference between ethnic minority and indigenous people. You know, we just want to have our right to live on our own land in peace without fear and discrimination, based on our right to identify as a people, as Khmer Krom, rather than as an ethnic minority. So I think we were able to let the committee members know basically what we want and some of the issues that our people face in the recommendation during the side event. So around 3 p.m. we had the main event, which was a delegation of over 21 Vietnamese officials. It's very rare that you get an opportunity to meet 21 delegation, but it was really interesting to see how the delegation was behaving. It was as if they were given a script to say, but it's interesting how this committee is formed. It's like basically what happens with this type of meeting. Vietnam will give a report, and then the committee is responsible for examining the report of Vietnam, and then it hears from stakeholders, which are civil organizations like the KKF, and then it can propose a question to Vietnam. So one of the one of the first questions that one of the experts questioned Vietnam was that in Vietnam's report, it says there's no indigenous people, but in actual fact, if the people, how does Vietnam classify the Khmer people as a minority if they wish to be identified as as indigenous people? So that question is really important because it really poses the question of, well, what happens if we want to self-identify as Khmer Krom, as indigenous? What is Vietnam going to do? Because that is our right to self-determination. It's a cultural right, and Vietnam should not discriminate us based on our right to self-identify. So that was really important. I guess what Vietnam responded They didn't respond as well. They really didn't answer the question. What they did just say that they respected the rights of Indigenous people and that they're vulnerable, but